And at number 10 is their size. Their queens can grow up to 2 inches long. Normal bees, on the other hand, range from about 1 to 1.4 centimeters long, which means they're literally 4 times the size of like normal bees, like normal size bees. I can't even begin to imagine what seeing one of these would be like. If people are freaking out of these bees and how small they are, imagine seeing one of these. They would be freaking out even more. Coming into number 9, while we're on the topic of their length, is the length of their stingers. Well, let's talk about this one. And we're talking about 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 of a bee. I mean, these stingers are so long that they can even penetrate beekeeping attire. So they might want to rethink their bee suits. So I don't even want to know what it's going to be like to be stung about one of these. 1/4 of an inch, that's like going through my arm. Okay, my arm's not that skinny, but maybe. Continuing with their stingers, in at number 8, well, we're going to be talking about what exactly happens when a murder hornet stings you. For starters, it apparently feels like you're being stabbed with hot metal. I don't know that feeling, but it doesn't sound fun to me. And yes, they can kill people. There's an article on Quartz, and it states that the venom that comes with the sting, it can send a human into anaphylactic shock and organ failure, breaking down flesh and frying nerve endings. On average, they kill 50 people per year in Japan. The only time you hear about normal bees killing people is if, they have an allergic reaction to them. Well, this, you don't need allergic reaction. It can kill anyone they choose to sting. And people who survive, well, they often have an inflamed heart and liver for months after the sting, so it infects your internal organs. Number 7 is the fact that they can completely wipe out the entire bee population. And that's pretty detrimental. Now, this is especially concerning given the fact that bee populations are already in danger due to climate change. The last thing they need is a whole species of hornets out for their heads. Literally, the hornets use their jaws to decapitate the bees and take over their hive. In the span of just a few hours, they can kill up to 30,000 bees. And while the bees in Asia have developed a way to defend themselves that involves gathering and vibrating with such intensity that it cooks the hornet to death, North American bees have not yet developed a defense mechanism like that, which makes them especially vulnerable. I mean, these bees in North America, they have no idea what these new species are. They're a long-distance cousin that you just don't want over for Christmas. Continuing in at number 6, these murder hornets are incredibly hard to kill. In China, the locals have come up with multiple ways on trying to kill them, including fire, water, smoke, poison, and even welding guns. And don't ask me who came up with trying to weld the hornets to death. I'm not sure how that makes sense right now, but obviously people in North America are being warned not to destroy their hives on their own and instead run in the opposite direction if you see one. You do not want to be attacked by one. It's pretty scary, especially because the hornets will swarm you of up to 25 miles per hour if they feel like, you're a threat. And I'm pretty sure not even Usain Bolt has a chance of outrunning a bee coming at you at 25 miles an hour. Halfway through, and at number 5, it's that time is of the essence if we want to keep the plague of hornets contained. Entomologists have apparently spent the winter trying to find and eradicate their nests because the hornets hibernate in the winter. But once the ground thaws and the springtime arrives, they make their annual debut and it becomes a lot harder to control them. One entomologist said that getting the nests in the winter is key to keeping the population at bay. If we can't do it in the next couple of years, it probably can't be done. So if you see one of these giant hornets or one of their nests on the ground, for the sake of all of us, I'm talking about humanity, please report it. Next up, number 4, they place a sort of a tracker on their targets so the rest of the colony knows what beehive to attack. So they're pretty intelligent and they're working together. As soon as a scout murder hornet finds a food source, meaning a honey beehive, they secrete some sort of special scent on the hive to alert the other honeys. Now imagine this substance or this secretion, it ended up being on you, and now you're being attacked by hundreds, if not thousands, of these killer bees. Well, these bees, they swarm the hive, killing the bees inside and stealing all of their honey and bodies. I don't know what they do with the bodies, but honestly, this is just terrifying. Next up, number 3 is where they make their nests. While beehives are usually pretty easy to spot, as they like to attach themselves to the side of things, usually a bit hidden but still high enough off the ground that you won't trip over one, murder hornet nests are not quite as visible. They prefer to build their nest in forest areas and specifically underground, which makes their nests pretty much invisible. I mean, how did these things become so intelligent that they figured that out? Which is obviously an issue because remember what I told you guys, that they attack when they feel like their nest is being threatened. But I mean, it's not fair because we can't even see their nest, so we can be threatening their nest and not even know it. Next up, number 2, we have no idea how they got here. Some people believe that they may have gotten trapped in a shipping container and brought overseas, but there really is no way to know. I mean, how have they survived a shipping container? And even more terrifying is the fact that there might be multiple instances of them arriving because a hive of them have been found and destroyed last year. Well, they had genetic testings done that suggest that these giant hornets were introduced to North America separately than the other ones we're currently dealing with now. I mean, how many times can you accidentally introduce an invasive and deadly species into a country? And finally, number 1 is the way they take over beehives. First, swarms of hornets will infest a colony, then they will proceed to bite the heads of all of the bees, wiping out the hive in about an hour and a half. Well, this is appropriately named the slaughter phase. It's like a bee movie had a horror movie subplot. And once they have successfully murdered all of these poor defensive honeybees, then they begin the feeding stage. In this stage, they occupy the hive for about a week, stealing the honey, and because these are murder hornets, they eat the babies. So starting us off, number 10 is they start to hunt in April, which is why we've been seeing them, in April. So they can very well be the reason why that they're popping up now, why everyone's talking about them now. But luckily the murder hornets, or should I start calling this thing the Asian Giant Hornets? Well, luckily it isn't a threat all year long. Well, that's a really good must-know fact about the murder hornets. They will eventually go away. They remain relatively dormant through the winter. I mean, it's too cold for them, just like it's too cold for us, so we hibernate inside. But they do start seeking food starting in April. During the late summer and the fall is when they're at their most aggressive. During this time, their body color becomes intense and the weight of the queen increases by about 20%. They are most likely to go to the honeybee colonies during this time. Well, let's hope we don't see these guys into the fall. I don't think we can handle getting to level 8 or 9 of this Jumanji game. Number 9, where there is smoke, there is fire. What do I mean by that? Well, one bee can't just exist on its own. They typically have nests with anywhere from 500 to 1500 murder hornets. So the whole worry that they've been found in the US is actually quite scary because if you see one, there's probably like 499 right behind you. Next up, number 8, they prefer low forested areas. While it's currently unclear how these Asian giant hornets came to North America, well, the area they've been spotted in makes sense. They prefer to live in low altitude forests and mountains and build underground nests. Just like I mentioned in the first video, the underground nests is to make them invisible. I mean, these are advanced species we're talking about here. Bees make hives in trees where bears and other animals can access them. Building a hive underground, I mean, this is next level. And you probably won't find these insects in high altitude areas or open plains. So it's time to get to higher ground. So hide your kids, hide your wife. It's time to get to higher grounds. Next up, number 7 on this list, they have been cited to have a human death rate of roughly 50 people per year. So all of you guys who are saying, oh my God, is this real life right now? All these people are afraid of these giant hornets. I mean, they can't harm you. Well, 50 people per year sounds like people dying. However, in 2013, parts of the world, China, they experienced a notable exception to the hornet's typical disinterest in humans when swarms killed 42 and injured more than 1,600 reported in Madison Park and Dayu Zhang and Elizabeth Landu of CNN at the time. Okay, that's absolutely insane when you think about that 1,600 people were injured. I mean, maybe we should be a little bit more afraid of these things. Number 6 brings you to multiple stings. Well, the advice that people are giving in China is that people stung more than 10 times should seek medical help, and you're going to need emergency treatment for more than 30 stings. And remember that I said that they travel in like packs of 500? So 30 stings, it sounds very plausible. Deaths have occurred as a result of multiple organ failures, and this is typically after a large number of stings. Those who died on average were stung about 59 times. I mean, that's a pretty precise number, but you know what? Let's move on. We're halfway through this list right now. Number 5, we got, just like other bees, there is a queen bee and workers and drones. I don't really really need to explain what the queen bee is. I was researching bees for this, and queen bees are intense. Usually there's like 3 to 5 queen bees born, and they have to fight each other to the death to become the best and the strongest queen. So when the queens are born, they're born at a huge disadvantage. So they fight it off, they become victorious, and then they don't do anything but watch the beehive. And the drone bees, well, it is a male bee, they don't have stingers. And of course, we all know that if you're stung by a bee, the bee does die. You go a little bit of owies. You won't really die from a bee sting, but you definitely don't want to be stung from these murder hornets. Number 4, parasites for the win. So normally parasites are pretty gross and no one would be cheering for them. In this case, however, certain parasites can render these murder hornets infertile and unable to reproduce, meaning that they could just die off naturally. Members of the Stylopedia are parasitic insects, host insects of the family that are affiliated and referred to as being stylopesed. Finally, number 3 on this list of the top 10 facts about murder hornets you should know. Well, there's some good news. Some bees have figured out a defense systems against these murder hornets. Remember in part 1 I was telling you guys that the murder hornets are new to like North America, and the bees over here, they have no idea what these creatures are, so they haven't had, you know, hundreds of years to build up a defense mechanism to try to fight them off. Well, it seems like they're slowly learning, and some bees have actually figured out this defense system. I mean, most of North American bees are helpless right now, and when a murder hornet wants her beehive, the bee just can't defend itself. Well, Europe and Asia, the bees there have come a very long way. I mean, that's their native land. They know how to defend themselves. They know how to defend their queen. So if a scout from a giant hornet nest finds a hive of honeybees, it will swoop in to mark the target with a pheromone that will attract the other giant hornets to tell them, you know, this is the hive to attack. But if the hive is full of Japanese honeybees, the bees will play it cool like nothing is happening until the hornet enters the hive. Then it will swarm the scout and begin vibrating their wings. The vibrating ball of bees generates enough heat and buildup of carbon dioxide inside the ball that it actually cooks and suffocates the hornets. So there's a report that came out on Daily Mail, and the title of the article was How Japanese Honeybees Defend Themselves from Murder Hornets by Surrounding Them and Vibrating Their Bodies to 116 degrees to cook them to death. Number 2 on this list, everyone wants to know who named the giant Asian hornet, the murder hornet. Well, Junichi Takahashi, a researcher at Kyoto Sangyo University in Japan, said the species have earned the murder hornet nickname. Well, it's because it's an aggressive group that can expose victims to doses of toxic venom equivalent to that of a venomous snake. So are you telling me that this giant hornet is like a venomous snake flying, like a venomous snake with wings? Finally, number 1, we have murder hornets are a delicacy in Japan. Although hornets are responsible for a percentage of hospital visits in Japan, that doesn't stop them from snacking on this predatory stinging insect. In many Japanese mountain villages, hornets are considered a delicacy, especially hornet larvae. Often eaten either deep fried or raw, hornets provide a huge amount of protein. You know what? This is protein that I actually don't want. Well, the grubs are often preserved in jars, pan-fried, or steamed with rice to make a savory dish called hibo gohan. The adults are fried on skewers, stingers and all, until the body becomes crunchy. Hornet larvae produces a sticky sweet segregation known as Vespa amino acid mixtures, or VAAM for short, VAM, which attracts the workers and gives them energy. VAAM is also used in a popular Japanese energy drink. If Red Bull gives you wings, what would a Hornet energy drink give you? Stingers? So starting off this list like we always do, in at number 10, panic over the hornets will lead to the deaths of honeybees, which we actually need. Honeybees are very important to our ecosystem. Not only do these hornets kill the honeybees that we literally need for crops and stuff, but people's reactions are actually killing the honeybees as well. So we're more dangerous to honeybees than murder hornets are to honeybees. People are placing traps that are intended to capture and kill the murder hornets, but what people don't realize is that these honeybees are also being attracted to these traps. So a little bit of advice: if you want to save the bees, don't accidentally trap and kill them. Moving right along, in at number 9, some beekeepers are taking steps to protect their bees from these murderers. They're doing this by making barriers between the hive and the outside, with openings large enough for regular bees but too small for the hornets, because these hornets are absolutely massive. Okay, maybe not massive. Unless you guys think 2 inches is massive, but when you compare it to a regular honeybee size, It seems pretty massive, doesn't it? Honestly, this sounds like a really simple and not dangerous way to protect your hives. If the hornets realize that they can't penetrate the hive, then they'll probably just move along to the next one, and hopefully the next one is also protected. All right, next up on this list, number 8. Entomologists think our concern is overdramatic. I mean, this is the internet. Everyone's always overdramatic. I'm overdramatic all the time, and that we should actually not be worrying about these murder hornets. In fact, instead, we should divert our attention to mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are the ones that are a problem. I mean, like, yeah, I get that mosquitoes are carriers of all sorts of diseases. They're just annoying. I mean, this is the reason why my wife doesn't want to come out and have fire pits with me, because these damn mosquitoes, it's stopping me from having fun. But you know what? We've developed vaccines for a bunch of these diseases that mosquitoes carry, and we know ways to safely kill them and protect ourselves against them. And their sting doesn't really hurt like, you know, getting stabbed with a hot blade. And yeah, I'm talking about the murder hornets. Their stings hurt, from what I'm reading on the internet. And at number 7, a Canadian couple took it upon themselves to hunt and destroy an entire nest on their own. I mean, these people literally sound like Dog the Bounty Hunter, Insect Edition. Once this couple heard that the killer hornets were found nearby where they lived in Nanaimo, BC, yes, I'm talking about the Canadian desert, and yes, I've been to Nanaimo, BC. My uncle lives there. He lives on a boat. He's lived on a boat for like 30 years. It's kind of cool. Well, they decided it would be a fun little outing to go out and hunt the nest. So now we have hunters for these murder hornets. And you know what? This couple was actually successful, but make sure you guys aren't taking this chance. Don't be the bounty hunter. If you guys seen that show, The Bounty Hunter, it gets pretty intense. The bounty hunter himself, he gets hurt all the time. So this couple was successful in destroying a nest, but don't think that you guys are going to be just as successful as them. Please don't do it. That brings us to number 6, though. The pain can apparently last around 16 whole hours. I know for me, when I get a paper cut and it lasts more than 20 seconds, I'm just crying and I'm tempting, you know, do I call 911? What do I do? It's the blood. It's not stopping. It's only been like 8 seconds. Well, after getting stung, this guy, John, well, he reported that the pain, it felt like getting whacked by a plank of wood, and that the pain lasted for a whole 16 hours. I mean, the pain of getting stung by a bee is bad enough, and that only lasts for like a few seconds. You know what? I'm kind of lucky on this one. I've never been stung by a bee. And you know what? When I was younger, I used to piss them off, but I was lucky to never be stung by one. I'm pretty sure me and my sister, we went after a beehive. I'm pretty sure she got stung like multiple times, and me, well, I guess the bees were too busy with her. All right, next up, number 5. The worst is yet to come, apparently. While people are starting to see the hornets again, which makes sense because they tend to start to emerge around this time of year, well, they don't usually get too aggressive until around August or September, and that seems to be coming up. And it seems also like August, like these bans, like these isolation bans are going to be lifted at the end of summer, and I guess just in time for murder hornets? I mean, this is pretty bad timing. What is 2020? Can we just take a year off our lives and pretend like we never lived this year? Let's just move on to 2021 and just forget about it. Well, this is when they begin their hunt for honeybee nests and larvae. And so I guess they're just on attack mode all the time. So if you're looking forward to the end of summer, don't. Number 4, unlike bees, they can sting multiple times without dying. This one is pretty self-explanatory. When bees sting, their stingers get ripped out of their bodies along with their organs. At least that's what I've heard. I mean, it's pretty gross and pretty lethal. Murder hornets, on the other hand, well, they can sting as many times as they want, and it isn't going to make a difference to them. I know I'd prefer if their stingers would just fall off every time they stung, because maybe they would think twice about stinging you. They won't do it as often as they're doing it. But then again, I don't want a 2-centimeter poisonous spike just stuck in my sting. I mean, keep it in your butt. Number 3, they're apparently attracted to hairspray and perfume. So I guess female are their victims. I don't know why this is, but I guess they don't really have a scent, or it reminds them of flowers. I mean, women do smell great, and flowers are where you can find bees often. So murder hornets now know this, and they go after flowers and hoping to find other bees as well. So they've kind of evolved themselves into liking the smell. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I'm no bee expert. I'm just this brown guy making YouTube videos. And at number 2, a man in Spain has died from a murder hornet sting. And a lot of you guys are on the internet, a lot of you guys in the comment section right now are probably like, oh my god, you're totally reacting, brown guy on YouTube who likes to make YouTube videos. These murder hornets can't kill humans, but here we are. We're talking about a man in Spain who has died from this. Well, he was tending to a wasp nest close to his beehive while he got stung by the hornet. I mean, if there was a bingo game of flying, stinging buzzing insects, I think we would have won. Honestly, okay, all jokes aside, this is sad and scary, and it just goes to show not only how dangerous they are, but also that there doesn't seem to be many limitations to where they're spreading to. Finally, number 1, the adult hornets are sometimes used in liquor. Is this real life right now? How does this even make sense? Yeah, I know I talked about multiple ways that they're eaten in the last few murder hornet videos, but I guess people just wanted to find more ways to consume these things. Personally, I absolutely don't get it, but a lot of them seem to love it. The hornets dropped into Sachu while still alive and while drowning, which is savage. Well, they release a venom into the alcohol. I wonder if James Corden is going to have one of these things on the next episode of Spill Your Guts. Or should I say, Fill Your Guts?